is, so we're starting now the second in the Mamer of Freitag zur Nacht was from Sivov, and in Motzei Shabbos from Siv Zayin, how Biprotius Shem Tzvokis is Megala the Etzem. It's Megala the Eitzeres, and the Eitzer Shel Yerushalayim Yisrael Tzvok Klal, and the Pnimis HaNefesh. So, really, in the Friedrich Rebbe's Mamer, this is the Iker. In other words, what the Rebbe there eingelegt is L'chure, a kind of Hagdome to the Inyan. As in the Mamer Netzach, when the from Bizbuz Eitzeres, that when it comes to Netzach is Megale the Etzem HaNefesh, so the name Tzvokis, which is Netzach V'Heid, really has a high Sheiresh. So the Rebbe gives us a Hagdome as L'chure B'chlal the Inyan of Shemes Rirton in Netzach. And Netzach V'Heid is more specifically. What's that help this Hagdome? Is L'chure, darf man etwas sagen, als das Wort, that the whole first part of the Maimir is just saying that it's Shem Rirton Netzach. It's not Megala Etzem. And that's the Chidush of Netzach V'Heid, that is Megalas, is Mamshech Etzem. You see the Keach and the Takef which comes out in Netzach V'Heid. So it's Kilo, because of this Akdome, of saying that Shem is Bechlal Rirton Etzem, it sharpens the Chidush of Netzach V'Heid. So, before we get involved in the Protei Inyanim, and especially the way it's over here in the Bosi and the way the Rebbe touched up, and there's Emek Lefnim Yemek, and throughout the years also there was different Eifanim how the Rebbe touched up versus the Bizbuz Eitzeres V'chulu. Mistam it's Kedai to first a bissel room raten outside of the Maimer, more Bechlal Yisrael Netzach V'Heid. The way it's in Pesach Toshin Tes, and the way it's in Omer Veshe Toshin Yud Dalet, on Frier, just Bechlal to get clark at what we're talking about, and then we'll come back to this whole mashal of the Melech, the ways in Mevaz's Eitzeres. But before we begin, just one word, which is it's an interesting thing to note. The Hemshech Bosi Legani Toshin Yud is really from Tavresh Pegim. Yeah, and it was said in two Shabboses, Parshas Bo and Parshas B'Shalach. Which, even Klali, if you look at the Hemshech Inyanim, these 20 Asias, it's really two different Inyanim. There's Bo and there's B'Shalach. What connects them? It's the word of Direh B'Tachtein. So the whole first part of the Hemshech, which is the first 10 Parakim, Parshas Bo Hestes, is as Direh B'Tachtein is Ibekeren, the Klippe, the Shtustik Dusha. And it goes through that this is Inyan of Karbonis, this is Inyan of Beis HaMikdash, this is Inyan of the Kroshim, this is for taking the Asis of Sheker and making Keresh, this is taking the Atishitim, Shtustik Dusha, to Shtustik Klippe. In other words, Direh B'Tachtein is Skafi V'Ishapche, which is going to be Mamshich, the Iker Shchine soll zurückkommen back to Tachtein. That's all. Was is Direh B'Tachtein? Then comes the Maimer Bei, wer can machen Direh B'Tachtein? And that's the Uftu of a Yid. And over here begins a whole new Mahalach as Netzach, Shem Tzvokes, more specifically, like the Rebbe said over here Friday night, that the Iker Abir is this word of Netzach V'Heid. That's the Iker Inyan of Tzova is Meloshen Chayil. And das ist a Yid. A Yid is with Tzivis Hashem. And Memela, because he's Mushrish in Hetze, and the Keiches, the Eitzer Elyon, the Eitzer Shir Shamayim B'chulu, the Far had the Keiach to do the Aved of Direh B'Tachtein. Now, what's interessant is, I mean, just Derech Agav, in Samach Vav, it's actually a similar Chalukah. You know, there's the first 52 Mamorim versus was is Direh B'Tachtein, and Mamshech the Hel Ma'atzmi, through Aved V'Keach Atzmi. And then there's the Ma'il of Yid, Shamas of Malachim, Verken the Stone. Now, what's interesting is that as Mizokt, that the Rebbe, our Rebbe, was there for the second Maimer, for B'Shalach. So I don't know if it's, I heard maybe it was the first Maimer that the Rebbe was there. That I heard from the Friedrich Rebbe Akopanim, was certainly one of the first. Now, was noch mehr interessant is I came Tofresh Peites, so I came Yudalit Kislev. So this is obviously on some level, I mean, it's on in Nirubar, it's the beginning of Deir Shvi, or setting the Yisaytis, the seed. The Frierdiker Rebbe said in the Mamer again, this same inyan, the inyan of Bizbuz HaEitzres and the Maila of Netzach. And that's the Omer Rabbi Shir in Peites, and the Rebbe has it, Yudalit, and a few times Yudalit Kislev, Yutes Kislev, the Hemshech to that. The Noch is the Noch Aprat. The fact is that the Hemshech, Bosi Ligani Tovshin Yud, the Frierdiker Rebbe printed. And obviously the Rebbe did it, but it was the Al Pi HaYiroeh from the Frierdiker Rebbe. It came out for Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud. What came out? The first 10 parakim. What came out then was for Yud Shvat and for there was two Mamorim, one to the Yud Shvat, and the Klovos Inyan is basically Parshas Bei Tavresh Begin. The Rebbe for Purim and for Beis Nissen put out the Hemshech, which is Beshalach Tavresh Begin. In other words, the first or one of the first Mamorim that the Rebbe heard from the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Mamer of the Rebbe's Chasana, and the first Mamer that the Rebbe printed in Tovshin Yud, says in Deir Shvi, is this in. It's a paladike Zach. In other words, Fun Sif Yud Aleph hebt sich on, I don't know if it's whatever, if it's richtig to say, but there's certainly something over here that there's the Aveda of Deir Shvi, there's a special yichus of this inyan of being Megala, the Eitzer Elyon in the Nefesh, the Bizbuz HaEitzeres is Shayches b'miyuchet to unser Deir. And Take b'metzias, the Rebbe spoke about that a lot of times. So it wasn't like a psaza, only a Yud Shvat sugi. It came up again and again and in different signenes. Sometimes the Bizbuz HaEitzeres meant, like it says, b'pashtos is Shamayim. Sometimes it meant Chassidus. That was one of the chidushim of the Rebbe. Was a statement früher that the Eitzer is the Rabbeim are giving or being Megala Chassidus. There wasn't Tavshin Yud, Nissen, Beis Nissen, I think, or Pesach, Tavshin Yud. The Rebbe said, as the Mashal Chayev Mineged, that is that the Rebbe is this, if the soldiers don't do the job properly, so that's why Tavshin Yud Shvat happened. The Rebbe said it very bestractions. It was then. The Rebbe said that again also, I think, Tavshin Tezvav, the singing. So there's differences. Sometimes the Moshel of the Melech is the Rebbe. Sometimes the Melech is the Eibishter, and the Rebbe is the Reish Pkidei HaChayil, which is like in our mind, Tavshin Chaf Aleph. So there's differences in Knechah, but that's a klar, that's a Yesod. This thing that we're going to be learning now is a Agresi Yesod in Chassidus, and in Deir Shvi specifically, this is a big Yesod in the Rebbe's Torah. Okay. So what we'll do is, we'll start Eshus Bepashtos being Mesachen in Yonim, even though it's very Bavusta Zachen. So we'll go Menakalo Lakovit, just to chew over Bepashtos, what is the difference, what is the Taich Netzach Haned Bepashtos, what does it mean that it's connected to its Shadish? Then we'll come to this Mashal. And next week, we'll be able to sich mehr reinlegen in the Prati Advarim, but you have to work Menaklal La Prat, Menakal La Kov. The Pashtus Netzach V'Heit is Chitzenis. Just like everything in Nefesh could be found in Guf, so the Netzach V'Heit is the train shaking. So if the Chesed Gvura is the Zreya, Chesed Drei Yamina, Gvura Drei Smola, so that's like part of the person. That's how a person expresses himself, is through his hands. His feet are erstens the more grub. That's the more coarse, and they feel the elements less. You could put them into hot water. Another zach is that they fit in the mensch wo will gain. but they can't do anything able. And that's the train shaking, Pashut, Netzach v'heit shebenefesh. Which means benefesh Adam, that a person has bichlal keich haseichel, midas, and then he has another part of himself, which is a simple part. The word of this thing is what we call, if it's in Nefesh Elikis, it's called the Nefesh Ruach HaNeshama. So Ruach HaNeshama is midas hameich, and the Nefesh is just the pashtus of the Nefesh. What is the what is the mile in them? Why do I need Nefesh? What not good enough Ruach HaNeshama? So sagt man Enechanami, alibe de emes mile sa'adam is mechin midas. But practically speaking, in order for a person to be able to do something, so he needs to have train shaking. So the dugma l'moshel Rav and a Talmid, in order for a Rav to give over to the Talmid, so benes is the fact that he has to have seichel, and he has to want to give over v'chulu. He has to have a what's called the klois hayetzis, which is pashut to transmit the seichel. Now that chush is not a chush in seichel; it's fakir. It's a chush in hamchoshe, in simplifying something, in taking a seichel and making it pashut. So it's what we would call the practical part of a person. Now this is, let's be magdir clearly, we're not talking about Maisa B'Payim. We're not talking about Malchus. Malchus is Machshava Dibur Maisa. What we're talking about over here is that there's a chelik from the nefesh, but in Yoni is Inyan HaMaisa. Meaning, if we'll be mamcheshit, there are, just like you have people, there's a personality which is a sichlistic person, there's a personality of midas, and then there's something called a personality of Maisa. He's a practical person. Everything he hears, the only way he understands it is you give him a dugma. Now, what's a dugma in the world of Seichel? It's the practical part of Seichel. So, al derech zeh in life bichlal, he's nimshich to Maisa. In other words, there's a nafshistic experience of Maisa. It's a Maisa, that's how he measures success. That's how he has sipuk. This is what gets him going. Maisa. There could also sometimes be a lot of chochmah in Maisa. L'mashul, you could have a genius, but if you ask him, how do you take this table through the door? So he doesn't know which way to twist it. And there is something called the chochmah in Netzach V'Heit, because it's a part of Shalom, like every sphere, just like you have chochmah in Chesed, you have so it's what's called Seichel Maisi. So it's practical Seichel, and it's a kind of personality, and every person really also has this in his nefesh. This Inyan HaMaisa Sheba Adam is kumoven. If I don't have it, I'm a balmum. Sometimes you have a person who's a sichli and a balhergish, but he doesn't have a practical side to him. He's missing something out. Not just Bapel Mamish is a battle and certain things are not going to get done with Tevase. He's possibly missing out on a certain part of life, just like a person who has Meichen and doesn't have Midas. He's a truckene mensch, se felt in Midas. So there is a person who has Meichen and Midas and doesn't have a chush in practicality. So there's an element of nefesh which he hasn't accessed, which he hasn't experienced properly. Is the sikkum, just let's get clear with the nukude, was man will da bringen is that it's not the Maisa B'Poil of Machshav Dibra Maisa, which is Levushi HaNefesh. Mered dam nefesh. But it's talking about the chelik HaNefesh which in Yoni mont and needs and pushes for Maisa. And this is true in Nefesh Bechlal and in the world of Seichel Befrat, the Inyan of Ashpa. Now, Lepoil, Zetman, that even though this is the lowest chelik of the Nefesh, let's just add one more word. In the development of the person, you see that a person develops Melmata. So first, for a young age, Bichlal children in Yonam is practical, right? And you can't explain to a child the midah. If you tell a child, Avos Yisrael, wissen was der Rest. Avos Yisrael means practically share with somebody else, or schlagnicht, or it's saying something pel mamishtik. And that's the way he touches up in his head. He can say, in Drosh Shlaim bis morgen, versteht nicht andere Sprache. And then he develops becomes a mitzvah person. And then there's a musik of real interest in Seichel. To Ladasa Saemes. Sumar Menech. Al derech ze beprotius is kipshutim when a child is born. So there's the first shlav before he's born is v'chinas ibur. The state is that he's the reshe ben birkov. So just like we said, train shaking, this is the part of the guf which is kineg netzach v'hei. So his head and his heart is kipshute. It's wrapped up. It's covered over by his feet. Meaning, as kolin yoni is netzach v'hei. Because what is the tafkid and the purpose of the life of a Uber? To exist. The per mamish to essen. The per mamish to just be, to not be. Das ist kolin yoni. Noch is da, so kommt da raus, so it starts developing what's called Yenike. So it's Yenik, Begashmius, Yenik Chola from the mother, and but in the Teichen Inyan it means that it's taking in Inyan which is going to develop him, which is already Midas, he's becoming a Psametzias. Then there's a Hecheret, Seichel, that's like as a child starts asking questions and starts growing. When he's 10 dam dogon, so it's already when he's 2 years old or older, that's when he starts speech, dibur, which is seichel. So that's the development of a person. Adkan is bepashtus, the inyan of netzach v'heit, the way we would say it before the uftu of Chassidus over here. B'mitzia zetmen, that Chotch Netzach Vahid is lower, you see that the Netzach Vahid reaches into a deeper place in the person and it has a medike kayach which Meichen Amidas don't have. And that's expressed in a few things. First of all, Poshet in consistency. You see that Midas, Miloshen Medida, by definition, the measure of a Midah, which that's what Midah means, constantly changes. So you have, you develop a Ava, and then the Ava goes down, and it's dynamic. That's the way the world of Midas is, as it. Afila Seichel, which is L'chura more stable. I mean, if it makes sense, so it makes sense. I've been convinced. Aber Kumuvn, there's something called changing your mind. And fakert, a real person who's learning, who hasn't changed his mind on any sugya, is the taichiz that he's not learning. A real person who's learning should change. Seichel is open-minded. Afile rotzen, afile tiferen nefesh, these things are always soft. There's a musik of pnimis rotzen, a chitzenis rotzen, bimun is gala, lesson is gala. There's always going to be shinui. Masha'enkin over here, that's what Apala de Kezach. The musig of Netzach v'heit is Masha Hoya Hushayir. There's a certain consistency, reliability, which there is in Netzach, which there is in Pelamamsh. Like you see in a Pelmamishdika person, I'm saying if we're going to meet a personality of a Pelmamishdika mensch, Zetman as wie er arbiter. As er wird die Arbeit nechten arbiter. A person which deals in hergish, yeah, someone who deals in art, or in poetry, or is a mechaber nigunim. Jeden Tag is andere Tag. Every day is different Welt. In Seichel sich sicher, every day is growing, it's changing. And then there are people which their personality is as was sie gewähnt, das es sein. Because this is who he, as is a gestalt. That's why, I mean, there's a mile in Netzach V'Heit, in pastures. Yeah, you ask any person, you'd say, it could be, you could say, he's very klug, and very out, but he's not stable. He's not stable. He's not a reliable person. Then you can have a person which is a pashut mensch, versteht sehr wenig, but he's reliable. He's responsible. He's going to be there on time. And this is an Inyan in Nefesh of strength, which doesn't exist higher in Nefesh, in Mechin Amitis. And it's Mashlim. From this uptight and a bisschen besser in the Loshen Netzach. What does it mean in winning? So the dogma of them is that if you have a person who's going out to battle, so for us is already going of Milchama because he believes in the king and he believes in the mission, he believes in the country, so Sai, he was convinced in Seichel, and Sai in Hergish, he feels a loyalty and he feels a passion, he feels the connection to the identity. Yeah, it's nicht stand the arbeit of the Meshuach Milchama is to give a gesunte drasha, which is going to be Ma'eder Hergish. That's going to be the fuel on what the Milchama will be. The Metzias is aber that in the middle of a battle, when his friend already died, and he had to change vegetan da, and he lost half his food, and he's in himself. The teva is that all the svaras and all hasbaras and all ideologies is out the window, and the hergish, nicht nur is the hergish not here for the country, nor if he has a hergish bichlal, it's a fakert hergish. He's frustrated and he's upset and he wants to go home. So, what keeps him going? Why is he still going to continue? So, it must come from a place in Nefesh where we have to win. We have to be consistent. We're going to pull through. So, on the one hand, this Netzach V'Heit is a very pashut thing. On the other hand, it brings a consistency. And that's going to make him fight a battle for something he doesn't understand or doesn't feel for. And that's real loyalty. It's the art of, in the sprach of the Amalek Chassidus sprach, the Azeh Nitandish. Azeh does. Amos Azeh Nitandish, it can't change. Yeah. So that's the marshal in the Lulav Zaktman. Yeah, there's the Hadassim. Hadassim is the Areach Anatam, which is Midas. That's why we have a lot of Hadassim. And the Arov is a Shnei Badi Arov. So the original Hadassim is 3, because it's Chesed Gvura Tiferes, and the Shnei Badi Arov is Netzach V'Heit. So it's a state that the Hadassim should cover the Arovas. That's our meaning. That's why we take more and more Hadassim. Because the Teichen Einen is Netzach V'Heit should be covered. A lebendige, geschmacke, gesunde Mensch should be on fire. He has a chayes from the middes, and Mamer is a lebendig. Aber what happens if the middes go away? I mean, for the same price we said I could grow, and you could have 36 Hadassim, so you could have less. The Shnei Badi Arov was something which they're covered over, but they don't change. The number doesn't grow. And because it doesn't grow, it's impossible to shrink. He is what he is. You can rely on it. That's the mile of the Arove. Was ist der Arove? Der Pashte Yid. Hat nicht kein Seichel, hat nicht kein Midas, hat gar nicht kein Reich. Ist Netzach V'Heit. Ja. Das ist ein Prat in Netzach V'Heit. Netzach Miloshen Nitzchius. Consistency. It's always going to be there. Der noch ist doch noch ein Platz. In Tovshin Tes, the Friedrich Rebbe is marchiv that there's also pshittis in Netzach V'Heit, which there isn't in the Mechin and Midas. Meaning, it's not complicated, it's not murkiv. There's no reason for it to be. It just is. The tnu of Netzach V'Heid is, I can't explain why. As Eidos, I'm loyal. Masha'en Kein, Seichel Midas is Murkiv. And this is taka the reason why this changes and this doesn't. This is the first chiluk we made, that this is because shaykh to change. And this not, the reason is because this is Pashut and this is Murkiv. Dennoch is da a dritte Sache. And this is already more shaykhs to our Mamer, the Teikif. You see in Netzach V'Heid a Teikif, a power, a passion, which there isn't in Meichen HaMitzvahs. And that's the surprising part. Maybe if you tell me consistency, good, it's a glump. A tree grows and shrinks. A stone stays where he is because he's dead. Does that mean that he's stronger? In other words, you see a sirirt on a tifere art in nefesh. The Pashat Amchasha for them is when you see Netzach every day in an argument or in a game. Yeah? And two people sit down to play a game and they sat down for pleasure. And within 5 minutes, jeder einer schwitzt and he's nervous and he has to win. And if I don't win, then there's no taking to it. And he's not going to lose because there's nothing to lose. It's a game. And the reason you're here is you came to spend good time with other people. But once you ma'ere the midas ha-netzach sheben nefesh, is vertus meshugi. And it's kilo irer amay metzias if I don't win. And the emphasis is I have the same thing in conversations with every people. Every day I have with people. We start discussion, trying to figure out pshat in the Gemara. And within a few minutes, the discussion is not what's pshat, the discussion is who's right. And in order that I should be right, I'm ready to do everything. I'll bring Mamer lachmech for fakrim in the sugi, I'll say a modna svara. I'll even change the topic and I'll convince you that I said what you said and you said what I said. The ikar is, there should be other, I have to win. The point is, already the agenda, we sat down to no pshat. Now there's a new agenda. I have to win. At any cost. So, these three inyanim, the nitzchius, the pshitis, and the tekev, are all simonim that where does Netzach V'Heid come from? A tifere place in the nefesh, it comes from the etzam nefesh, which is higher. The reason it's pashut is because it's taka higher than any other cover. And the reason why I can't change is because this is who I am. I can't, because you could change is always going to be in a prat, in a certain biti of the thing. You can't change the thing itself. You know, but pastures, yeah, you could take a table and you could change it. You'll change its color. You could change it. You could change its texture. You could change. You can't take a table and make him into a chair. Then it's not a table anymore. It's not called changing. It's called replacing. Voseries could never change. Etzem can't change because this is what I am. You could change details. So my mind you could change. My heritage you could change. You can't change my Netzach because this is who I am. Because this is my spine. This is why the expression of who I am is Ich bin a soldat. I'm gonna continue. There's nothing to be chazer. Und al derech zeh is verstandig why there's such a takeoff because it's like an irrational thing which is being touched in my nefesh. Yeah. Therefore, you see that this Inyan HaMesiras Nefesh is Nizgala Dafke by Enoshim Pshutim. Because the Inyan of Netzach V'Heid is connected to the Etzem, he comes from the Etzem, is therefore, through him could be Nizgala in HaMesiras Nefesh, which Mesiras Nefesh comes from the Etzem HaNefesh. Und das ist, was steht, als Moshe Rabbeinu hat Mekane gewinnen in the Yidden, von nichts to the Mashiach, because by them, Mesiras Nefesh was the most basic guns. Now, Bezeh Gufe, just Pavarim, that there is sometimes you have a marshal in El Mishpatim Eter, you have in different places. In his Masber, the reason why Mesiras Nefesh could be in his Gala through Netzach V'Heid is because he is Pashat to Mamela is not stira. Tzir is a stira to Gili of Etzem HaNefesh. Seichel is a stira to get an Etzem HaNefesh. Masha'en came Netzach V'Heid, it's Pashat. It's like a Pashat, you know, like we always say the story of a king who had a crown. He wants to hang up the crown, so he's not going to hang up if he doesn't have a hook. So he's not going to put on the head of one of his sarim because one of them will think that maybe it's a pastake. So he'll put the crown on the head of one of his soldiers, one of his pashat avadim, one of his slaves, because over there won't be a machshava zar. Why? Because what is he? He is a hook. Das ist Is can't tragen the Kra in Chotch. He's not shaykhis to them because he has zero shaykhis. It's not stira. Or even a Malzach, even more pashto marshal, is a very old marshal. It says from the Bill Paritcher, steht noch von früher, that the Melech, when he wants to get undressed or he goes to sleep, he's not going to allow that there should be anyone in the room. He's not going to allow a sar. He's not going to allow anyone. Why? It's a pasnish. The uftu of a evet pashat is that he could be in the room. That is dort and da. The schlepper, the slave, is there. Why? Because that's still to me. So the melech could be the gamre be his galus if he's a pashat person. But the Rebbe in Eikim Chelek Teski Yodua learns tifer. That's not the types of Netzach V'Heid is just allows for pshittas nefesh to be in his galam. So this nefesh could be in his galam on the Ikvaim, because the Ikvaim is not considered, nor because he's a Keli. Why is he a Keli for Etzem HaNefesh? Because the Tchuna of Netzach V'Heid is Kanal, Tekev, Pshittis, Nitzchius, and therefore it's a Keli for Mesiras Nefesh. It's not just that it's not a stira for Mesiras Nefesh. And Yonei is Etzem. He's an expression of Etzem. Ad kan is viseretzach the Indian bichlal in Chassidus with Beikar Tafshintes and these places which describe the Vaad Talmidei HaTmimim. In our Mamer and Bosi Legani, it's miyusad on Teres Chaim, Pashas B'Shalach. There's a new slant on this whole Indian of Netzach V'Heid. Till now, we were talking about the Ish Pashut. Where does Netzach mean is Gala? Dafka by Ish Pashut. So let me fragen, by Chacham Gadol, so Enechanam, the Netzach is Behelam. And it doesn't, he's not a Caliph from Mesiras Nefesh in the same way. Comes this Mamer, really, it's in Alter Rebbe, and it's in Mamer Admor in Yoni. Sorry, no. In Pashas B'Shalach. In Pashas B'Shalach, in Mamer Admor Azakin. Over there, it's more Bekitzer, and Teres Chaim is Psazei Baruchov. Now what? The Midas HaNetzach is in Nizgala Dafke by a Melech. So we take a whole new direction. Till now we're saying by Ish Pashut. Now we're saying by a Melech. And in order to explain this, Sehet Tzachar a ganze lange Moshel. Now in Tafshin Yud, it's very bekitzer, but the Moshel it's important to get all the pratim straight. So we're going to go back a bit. Let's go through it slowly and make sure we chap the story properly. But you have a king. Now, this king, there was somebody, it could be a sar koton or something simple, was ma'arer on him, was mischatzev to him. Now, there are places where it says this whole story of Netzach V'Heid, Moshel, if you see Sharet Tshuva, Perek Zayin. The Mittler Rebbe talks about it, that there's somebody coming to be ma'arer on the life of the king. So therefore the king will go and fight to save his life. Over here we're not talking about that. We're not going to save his life. Fakert. There's some narishkeit. Is that menazeh? Behektiv. The king has eitzrus. Why does the king have eitzrus? For a few reasons. Number one, he collects taxes. Number two, he's won wars and plundered countries, so collected their money and their eitzrus. Number three, he has b'Yerusha me'avesav and avis avesav b'Yerusha, all these inyan. Now these inyanim, which the Melech has, nobody ever sees. So, afilo, so there are many matzavim where people would want to see it. There's a sar gadol or a chulu, weiß das nicht. Why not? So the interesting lashon of the Mittler Rebbe is because it's eine lefi chveide. Eine lefi chveide to show these things. Now, this is, I should not have to try to explain to an American that there's something called covet, and not showing something is, I mean, today, in the heutige narische Welt, covet means attention. Covet means fame. I mean, so verkehrt. If my biggest covet is alles sollen wissen, was ich hab. What does it mean that it's eine lefi chveide? It's a secret. No, I'm not giving it away. No one's allowed to see it. And if it's a verleren covet. So the was liegt dort, darf man sagen, ist also, that there's the real mustig of covet is that this I be'etzem with the lashon is covet Hashem haster dover. Covet implies privacy. The pashtus, you respect the person, it means that you don't interfere in his life. That's covet. This says there's a part of me which is beyond, which is not touchable. What's the covet of a melech? As there is a atzmi. There's something about me which no one's going to ever know. If everything I am is available to the public, is mit was bin ich? In other words, what makes him a king is these eitzvahs. That's the Agav Mistama why, when he conquers a country, he plunders those eitzvahs. And he takes those eitzvahs home, and that's the type, I won that melech, because I took his eitzvahs. This is a very important thing to understand, that an eitzah, by definition, is not to spend. You ask a pashta person, there's two options. What am I going to do with gold? Either you spend it, or you show it. You make it like a nice gold and a jewelry, and you show it, so now you look nice. Is heik der Mensch nicht anzuverstehen, was is covet? There's something called owning gold. I have jewelry which was on eye. Nobody ever saw. And in that makes me into a mitzvah, to a real mitzvah. That's the melucha. Now, when a sar cotton was ma'arer on my mitzvahs. So what's going to happen is a crazy thing. These eitzres were never nisgal. Even when it came to a matzav of tainuk, as I state beferish, he was never megalit. What says? If the melech would go and look at these eitzres, he would have a big tainuk. He would also have a big tainuk to show other people the eitzres. Why doesn't he do it? Because his covet is more important than his tainuk. I am more important than my expression of I. Tainuk is the richtig, it's stuff of an experience. It's not me. I am not available for that. The only places I'll ever be shown is the dogma is by his son's chasana. Why? Because over there is the meluch. My son is the meluch. Or when he's celebrating the fact that he's the melech, like a Chashvedish, he's melech for so many years, good, he's celebrating melucha, it's the past. Now it's kilu gili ha'etzim. So then these eitzres are allowed to be shown. But normally there's no way to show them, besides for netzach. Kumteis, that's the hechrech, that netzach is tifer in nefesh v'tainu. I'm saying this is the pashta cheshbon in the Mamer. That netzach must be tifer, because for tainu I'm not megala the eitzres, even to myself, and for netzach I am. Not only am I megala the eitzres, I spend the eitzres. Now over here it's important to understand, spending means that it's not coming back. What am I spending the eitzres on? I'm spending the eitzres on mozen, as I state, mozen for the soldiers. This is the taich is that now I'm spending all the money to buy to make my country bigger. Let's buy more shetach. The net. I'm spending it on people. That they should have supper. And it's no return. I'm spending on ammunition, which is going to be shot, and it's never going to be used again. Now, that's the taich, the lotion bizbuza eitzres. It's plundering, it's spending. It's nicht zurückkommen, geendigt. And noch is though, as nicht not am I spending the thing, that he himself is eisig b'kishre melchama, bizar ze mashal chayiv minay. Does that mean, as the melech brings out his midas ha-netzach? And netzach is different than alle inyanim in the melech. Now, over here, we're going in a whole new direction than talking about the Ish Pashut. Till now, we're talking as there's a teikef in Netzach V'Eit. This shittus of a person is connected to his etzem. It's working b'keach ha'etzem. Very good. Could I say that etzem is behis galus by him? Beferish nicht. No. Fakert, if you're going to meet this soldier who's in the trenches, and it's continuing midas on netzach, he's fighting on, lamreista, I lost his chayes, his geschmack. Are you going to see gilia etzem? Fakert, you're going to look at his eyes, he's in ganzen verloschen, and he's beleges at himself that he got himself into this, and he's missing home. Elamai, ich kann nicht anders. He's loyal. That's what's happening. He's loyal. The midas ha-netzach over here is a tifa expression of nefesh, of etzem ha-nefesh, but it's not coming out it's not coming out begili. It's a hashlocha, let's call it like that. It's a byproduct of the etzem. Masha'enkim by melech, we're talking about andere zach. His covet was touched, or his inyan ha-malchus was misarer by this sarkot. So now he's going to go full force, he's going to come roaring out, and he's going to go for battle. It's a gili of etzem ha-nefesh.
This is limited to Melech?
Oh. So, state in our Mamer that, and it says it also in Toshin Teres in a few places, that who has inyan ha-meluch, who has this inyan of netzach, dafke a God, nishkin kotten. In other words, a regular person doesn't have so much midas ha-netzach. And dafke, and who's the gresta God? That's the melech.
In St. Pilam, as you see people that the Mashal Chaim is negative for these and also for a specific argument. You said earlier.
Okay. Yeah. It's just the Magdir. So what's the answer to that? Is by a regular person, most things are not negay. Yeah? In other words, we're pastures. If a sar cotton is ma'arer on my metzias, or is a sar cotton is ma'arer on the fact that it's not, I'm the only one in the world, that's fine, that's legitimate. What brings out by midas ha-netzach? It has to be something was get mir onrir, which is negay to me. So obviously every person is born with midas ha-netzach. But at what point is this person going to become fighting Bligvul. It has to be that I feel the heat. So it has to be something very important to me. So a regular Pashut person, most things are not negay. Masha'enk in the Melech, he's a Atzmi, which means that his Etzem is Begili. Etzem Begili is a touch that there's nothing in the world which could be a stira to me, and everything has to go exactly like me. And any prat which is not like me is Achaz Dase. Why? Because it's my whole Metzias Alt Melech. My whole Metzias Alt Melech is that it goes my way. So Shinish Negei of us. Then Musig you only have by a Melech. So a normal person will have the pastures more biti of Midas HaNetzach or less biti of Midas HaNetzach. Yeah? As it steht, you have in let's see, the Rebbe Rashab in Ayin Aleph. There's a Mamer in Ayin Aleph, it's a Hanoche. It's in the back of Ayin Aleph. It's a Hanoche. To look at that again. See there's two Mamorim which we only have the Hanochas. There's Kiseitze Samachei, that's in the Kavitz. There's a Mamer in Ayin Aleph. It's Metzuyin all over. So over there he says that there is schwachere expressions of Midas HaNetzach. That's by regular people. And at some point he'll give up. The Melech will be every prat and business of. So really, let's just be magdi properly over here. Really, who has real Midas HaNetzach? The Melech. A regular person will have expressions of Midas HaNetzach. Not the real mitzvah. What's with a Pashta mensch? A Pashta mensch is a Keli af Midas HaNetzach. He has a bitui of Midas HaNetzach in him. So this whole word of a Pashta person fighting on is not the Midas HaNetzach in its fullest form. The real Musar of Midas HaNetzach is that the Etzem HaNefesh is begili, and der Fahre is berememus. Und jeder sagt, was macht aus Merumim, so he's going to go and fight business off. That's the word of the Melech HaLem. Kommt says that the Melech and the Ish Pashut are the two extremes. It says the two sides, and both of the Netzach is Mizgala in a different Eifen. And then you have a regular, most normal people don't work like that. The Pashtus. A regular person, Abed Mitzeichel, I mean, sometimes yes, sometimes no, but it works if you take another. So this is the Lashon that Motzei Shabbos that the Rebbe added in the Mamer, which wasn't Friday night. The Rebbe zugelegt as Zbara. What's the taich that Dafken by a Melech because the Melech is then Etzem is behis galus. There's Gili HaNefesh, and that's what makes him. That's what makes by him as the other prat is negei business of. Okay, is Atkan is the Klomus HaMoshel v'mezetos by the Melech. I mean, obviously there's many pratim over here, was darf sich stellen auf sie, and bei Gufe in different burim, that we'll have to see next time. Just want to finish off with one word. This Nukudah that we just said, that there's covet, and the covet is the taich that it's be'etzem should be behelim. And as soon as it becomes is behelim, that's it. It's wasted. It's like, when I have a private secret, and one stop part of my never is ich hab das nicht. It's schon geworden, and there's no going back. And that's the type that the Melech sells his stuff, his eitzeres, and there's probably no going back. You can't buy it back. It's gendik. It was wasted on Mosen, on Shtussen. Why? Because he's spending it on people, on the Anshe Chai. So the Rebbe, in our Mamer and in Amar Beishi Yudalet, it's befedish, it's very clear that the Rebbe is saying as a chiddush, is that Bizbuz Eitzeres is Gili Achsidus. Usually, Meret Veg Nira Shamayim. The Rebbe always touches in Chassidus. As the Rabbeim in a Megal Chassidus. Now, so there's two Nakudas over here. Chassidus be'etzem should be a secret. There should be a chelik of Torah or a chelik of the Eibishter which is not accessible. Und das in Negea. As it darf sein. Es ist doch der chelik from the Eibishter which is good. Beide Elam Manhige. There's a chelik of the Eibishter which is gegeben Torah for the Welt. It's called Torah Dasiya. That's the chelik Apshat of Torah. Then there's a chelik of Torah which is supposed to be sod. Mit Torah das nicht wissen. And it shouldn't have been Nizgal. When was a Nizgal for people? A Yid is Beis Alfus, a Poshet Yid, is for them the Evan Shebekesser HaMelech is a Tzeribim for the Maila of a Yid. That's the Pele of Gilei Chassidus. So the Rabbi touched us. What's the word of the Anshe Chayil over here? It doesn't in Yidden. Yidelach. Nicht sorry Pekidim. So it says that how does the Melech give it? The Melech gives it to the Rosh Pekidei HaChayil, and he gives it to the Sorei HaChayil, until it reaches the Anshe Chayil B'Pei. The purpose of selling the Eitzeres, wasting them, is one thing. That the Pashat zone that is on Haben Supper. In other words, the Matore is for this Pashat Yid. Kommt es, was is the, mit Abteitschen bis bei Eitzeres, in the Chassidus, is what's the Matore over here is, as a Pashat Yid should take a Eitzeres, Chassidus, and use it for Pashat Zachen. And it's wasting it, I'm beferish, and it's not going back. Chassidus, you can't, like, someday say, okay, that's it, let's make Chassidus a secret again, let nobody know about it. Emos in this Galak, when it's in this Galak. It's ausgegossen, it's vergossen, und the Evan Shebekesser HaMelech has been zerrieben. You can't stick the pieces together again. It's gendigt. Aber das ist alt für a Yid, the fight, the last fight of Der Shvi, durchzuführen, durchzubrechen, bringen in the goal. It's all for ein Chassidul soll das tun. Das ist, also Eimek into the ganze Mais. All right. Next time, we'll go through a bit more, the way it's over here in Vasilagani and compared to other places, what punkt the upzutouch in the marshal and verschiedene Eifan.